Hello and welcome to Nourish Your Biblical Roots Special Edition. I'm Bishop Lanier, Chairman of the Board of Directors for the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and I'll be your host for today's podcast. We're broadcasting live from NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and during our time together, we'll be talking with special guests on a variety of topics, especially as it relates to Israel, the current situation there, and the work of the fellowship. Today, I'm extremely honored and grateful to welcome to the podcast a guest whose name is well known to our Christian audience, Ambassador Sam Brownback. For nearly 40 years, he has devoted his life to public service, all the while fighting for religious freedom and proving himself a friend of Israel. Growing up on a farm in Kansas, Ambassador Brownback worked as an attorney before being appointed the Kansas Secretary of Agriculture in 1986. 10 years later, he was elected to the United States Senate, serving on Capitol Hill for 15 years, before then serving as the governor of his home state until 2018. That year, the Trump administration appointed him the U.S. Ambassador for Religious Freedom. All of this work has given Ambassador Brownback a unique look at American friendship with Israel, and it allowed him to not only be a friend of Israel, but visit the Jewish state from many occasions, something he's done again in the wake of the October 7th attacks. It's because of this faithful friendship of God's people and his unique insight on the relationships between America and Israel and between Christians and Jews that I'd like to welcome Ambassador Sam Brownback to this podcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador, for being with us. It's an honor, sir.
Well, it's a pleasure to join you, and what a great group that you have. I mean, they just have been doing wonderful work and building this bond that is really a pretty recent phenomenon. Before, there was always just so much antagonism and differences between Christians and Jews, and here you're building the bond, and it's growing, and it's growing strong.
God's been so good over these 40 years when Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, of blessed memory, as you noted rightly, when he was launching this ministry, it was a bit hostile on both sides, with the misunderstanding and some understandings of differences. And how do you make that work? You've been a part of the conversation of Israel for a very long time. Take me back. How did you become involved? When was your first trip to Israel, and what was that like?
Well, my first trip was when I was in the Congress. That would have been 1995, probably, 1996. I've been there 9 times. The place was stunning to me because in my mind, I'd read the Bible much of my life. This place has got to be huge. It's got to be 10 times the size of Texas. And I show up, and I literally remember standing there and seeing, okay, there's Jericho, there's Mount Nebo, and
Lake.
I'm going, no, these can't be that close together. It's got to be much larger than that. But it's just so tight and confined, and then all these massive world-changing events that happen on this little piece of terrain.
Yes, sir.
That's, as a Kansan, I'm looking at, this is pretty arid, rough looking. I wouldn't want to try to farm here. I was impressed. And then just the character of the people and the land really, really grabbed you.
So you've been 9 times. Can you share with me your most recent trip? It's been since October 7th. Tell me, could you feel it when you landed? Could you tell something had changed since the massacre? And if so, describe to me your own personal experience.
Well, I could tell before I landed, I flew through Spain, through Madrid to get to Israel because so many of the flights were canceled. And it was right there at the Madrid airport that it looked like to me is where I really felt the first change of it, because the El Al plane was on the back side of the terminal. It was kind of away from everybody else. And it just, even, you could feel the isolation. And you could feel the Jewish people feeling that isolation, that the rest of the world was against them. This world of 7 to 8 billion people is now, and you've got 12 to 14 million Jews, and it's like they're all against us.
Yes.
And you could start to really feel that feeling that a number of Jewish people have, that they're all against us.
Sure.
And you kind of go, no, we're not all against you.
That's right.
A number of us are for you.
Yes, sir.
And I want to be here to show and to speak about that solidarity with the people of Israel.
When you landed, I assume, went down south and saw some of what had happened in the massacre, how did that, first of all, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel in that experience?
We went to one of the kibbutzes that was within a mile and a half of Gaza that had been overrun, that, you just got this carnage that's there, and people shot up and killed, and you're just, that the feel of the evil, I guess, is really what you grab. And then we showed at the International Religious Freedom Summit that I co-chair, we showed the footage, the raw footage of the attack that was from a lot of the body cams from Hamas soldiers and others. And just, you feel the anger, the evil just coming out when a guy's cutting another guy's head off and they're filming it with body cams and calling home saying, I killed a Jew. And you're just, this seems to me worse, or in the same category as Nazi Germany, when they're just wiping out Jews just to kill them.
And it's really not, and you would know this far better than I would because of your work, this really isn't about land as much as it's about genocide. And I've said if all of the Jews were to pack up and move to Utah, all of Hamas and all the other terrorists would follow them to Utah, because it's not about the land. It's determined to destroy every Jewish life, the evil, the carnage, the barbarism. It wasn't specifically about the soil, but the souls, determined to remove the Jewish people from the earth.
I don't know. I'm not sure quite how to respond to that, other than to say, a rabbi friend of mine, I was talking with him about this afterwards, and he said, ever since the Jewish people have been on the earth and have been identified by God as his people, evil has tried to wipe them out from the very beginning. And the story doesn't change.
No.
And you're just kind of going, wow, these are God's chosen people. And he's got a message that he wants to give the rest of the world through them. And evil has come after them in almost every country they've been in around the world since God selected them.
Can I ask you, through your own experiences with the Senate, especially, you had a firsthand look at America's long-time friendship with the Jewish state. Can I ask you, in your opinion, what can the United States do to show its support for Israel, even if the rest of the world is not showing that support?
Well, hopefully we will show and continue to show our support for Israel, because I don't think God will look kindly if we turn away. I think when the Brits turned away from Israel, it was a big, impactful thing on Great Britain. And, remember, God never needs a majority. He always is just looking for a little faithful remnant, and then he'll work through them, because he's the one doing, and not the rest of us. So hopefully we'll stay supportive of Israel. I remember when I first went into the Senate, I'd have a number of evangelical Christians coming up to me and saying, you've got to stand with Israel. And they were more passionate about it than the Jews were. And I was saying, yes, I agree with that, but why are you saying that? I said, well, you've got to. I mean, this is part of why we're a strong nation, is because we support Israel. We stop supporting Israel, we won't be strong. I mean, they were just really linking. And you think about it, too, that's kind of the way God does a lot of things. Man goes this way, and usually the way God is 180 degrees about the other way. We think you should be proud. God says, I hate pride. you should be humble. We think you should be rich and wealthy, and God's going, it's the poor that, just think about it. Most of his things are about 180 degrees opposite of the way those guys are away. And so when Harry Truman recognizes the Israeli state, and my farm I grew up on is about 50 miles from where Harry Truman grew up on a farm. And I was thinking about that on my very first trip to Israel, but all the advisors around Truman are telling him, back the Arabs. There's a lot more of them. They have oil. There's very few Jews, and they have no oil. And so this is, and Truman, raised in that same kind of biblical atmosphere, going to Sunday school, says, no, you stand, I'll bless those who bless you, I'll curse those who curse you. And he recognizes Israel against his advisors. That has been a huge blessing to the United States that he did that. And woe to us if we don't continue to do that.
Well, let me ask you, you also served as the U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom. What do you see as the greatest challenges facing people of faith today, both Christians and Jews? And what can our listeners do to ensure that people of faith have freedom and have a voice?
That question's getting tougher. It's getting tougher around the world, and it's getting tougher in even Western democracies because there's a lot of effort to really suffocate faith in the public square. I think one of the big things people can do is become aware of it. They can start helping out countries that are working on this, like Nigeria. There's a lot of people and groups working in Nigeria. We can push back more effectively against China, China's at war with faith, and we can talk to our representatives and our congressmen about that. One of the things we don't do near enough of is push our big companies to be supportive of religious freedom. Most people own stock, and they do it as an investment, but these stocks belong to big companies. And many of these big companies are moving hard left and often against faith and religion. Well, why aren't we contacting our CEOs? Wow, I own stock in this or that. Somebody owns stock in Disney company. Why aren't they writing the CEO? Why are you putting these movies out that you're putting out now?
Wow.
Why are you doing this? I had a guy tell me, said if people would vote their stocks the way they vote in the polling booth, most of the stocks would be like Alabama. They're owned by Alabama people. They're owned by conservative people, 70%. And yet they act like they're New York or California. Well, who owns the company? When it's conservative people, by and large, not exclusively. Okay, start voting your stocks. Particularly if you own a Meta or a big banking company that's debanking people or groups.
Yes.
And then we've got a little group we stood up that we've got to start, I think, getting more done. The National Council for Religious Freedom, and it's fighting domestically in the U.S. for religious freedom here. And people can go on our website and sign up for it at thencrf.org, thencrf.org, and they can get involved there domestically.
Finally, Mr. Ambassador, what's your message do you have for Christians now concerning Israel and its future?
Israel's going to survive, yes. They've got a promise from God. But any country that embraces anti-Semitism will be hurt. I had a Jewish friend of mine say that to me. He said, the Jews are going to survive. God's given them a promise. But look at any country, when they allow anti-Semitism to blossom, it kills the nation.
Yes, sir.
It's one of these counterintuitive things with God that we need to not be anti-Semitic, or it's going to kill us as a society. I mean, you look at nations that have persecuted Jews, and it just doesn't go well for you. Even though you're looking at this such a small population, it's not this or that. This is the way God's economy works.
Mr. Ambassador, I can't thank you enough for taking the time, making the time, for coming by and spending these moments with us. It's made a difference, and I thank you, sir, for your service for this country and for people of faith.
My pleasure. God bless you all.